What's up, guys? It's the Bluebloods coming back at you with another episode. We have a very special guest joining us today on the podcast. We are joined by Don Munson, the voice of the Clemson Tigers, and I just want to say thank you for joining us, Don.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, so just to get right into it, what's your opinion on, this most recent team in Clemson football, got all the way to the national championship, fell just short. Do you think this team was missing a vital piece of the puzzle, or do they just run into a buzzsaw that was LSU this year?
Oh, no, I don't think that this Clemson team was missing anything. And no, kudos to LSU. I mean, they were the better team that night. I don't think that you can say that. Clemson had some opportunities early on. The first couple of drives, they got inside the 30-yard line and came away with no points. In a national championship game, you can't do that. You've got to come away with points. The opportunities in the second half as well, a dropped interception that maybe could have turned the tide a little bit, because that was right after Clemson had closed it to a 3-point game at 28-25. So there were some things that were out there, but no, you can't discount what LSU did. They were fantastic in the game and certainly deserved to be national champs.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question I have, kind of following that one up. So after Clemson's loss in this year's national championship, I've been talking to a couple of Clemson fans, and they've been preaching one thing and one thing only, and that's determination for next season. How determined would you say this Clemson team is next year to get back into this national title race and to get into it, not only to get into it, but to win it next year?
Well, I mean, that's kind of even though it's not a team goal, all right, you will never find anywhere in Dabo Swinney's football building where it says win the national championship. That's not a team goal.
Right.
So make sure you know that first and foremost. But it's still where they want to end up. I mean, they want to be back in the college football playoff. They want an opportunity to have the opportunity to play for a national championship. The only way you can do that is by being one of those top 4 seeds. You don't have to be 1, but you have to be either 2, 3, or 4 to be able to do that. So it'll be a little bit of a driving factor, I think, but I don't think it's going to be as much as, say, it was with Christian Wilkins, Austin Bryant, Cleveland Ferrell, and that ilk that won the national championship 2 years ago. Now, I think that was definitely a driving factor for that team. I don't get the sense, though, that this year's team that will be necessarily the chief driving factor. But for those guys that came back, the reason they came back was to win a national championship.
Absolutely.
Even though it wasn't a team goal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just been so impressed with just the culture Dabo Swinney's built. And, you keep talking about these different teams, from last year to this next year. I mean, you've been involved with Clemson Athletics since early 90s, mid-90s. And, I mean, you've seen, all these football teams come through Clemson. I mean, which team that you've covered has, in your opinion, been the best team in Clemson history football-wise?
People ask that question of me all the time, and I don't have an answer for you to say that. I mean, I really don't, because I think that there are arguments for all of them. Now, doesn't mean I don't. I think obviously the first national championship in Tampa against Alabama, actually Clemson's second national championship. Obviously, they won in '81, but that game, from an excitement value, I don't know that you could top that. I mean, it was incredible. Clemson's down early in the game. They battle back, obviously take the lead midway through the fourth. Alabama drives right back, grabs the lead back, and then there it is with 2:07 left in the contest. And, what is going to happen? Deshaun Watson really had not been tested to that vein where he had to drive a team, with that little time on the clock and either get a tying field goal to force overtime or find a way to get into the end zone for the win. And obviously he does it with a second left to Hunter Renfrow. So from that aspect, I would go with that team. But from just a satisfying deal and seeing a team go 15-0 for the first time in the modern era, and now obviously LSU just did it again. So it's kind of ironic that there's back-to-back 15-0 teams I think. But it was just tremendously satisfying, the national championship win in Santa Clara, because there wasn't many that gave Clemson a chance. So that Alabama team was being called the greatest of all time. And Clemson went in there and, I mean, just dominated them. Just absolutely. And I can tell you, to a man, everybody inside the Clemson program felt like that they were the better team going into that game. And they felt like that they could win by double digits. Now, I don't know that anybody thought that they were going to win 44-16 the way that they did. But, I mean, it was just a dominating performance over Alabama. And, you know, one of the reasons that after that game, Sweeney said, hey, you've got to call us now the best ever. And obviously that didn't happen. There was a lot of second guessing that was going on, and there maybe were some folks that were sloughing off Alabama and saying, oh, they were tired, and that's all baloney. Believe me, nobody was tired going into that game. But from that ilk, I would say that national championship team in Santa Clara, as far as just being the most satisfying, was the top.
Oh, I agree. I mean, just watching that, I mean, the first team, like you said, in the modern era to go 15-0, I mean, that's outstanding, obviously. Which kind of leads me to my next question. So outside of these national championship games, was there any point maybe in the playoff or maybe in the regular season that made you sit back and say, wow, this team is good, like they're the real deal?
You talking about from this past year?
Yeah, let's go with 2018.
With 2018? Oh, I think there were some moments, through all of that. Surprisingly, I would tell you the close call they had at North Carolina, but they figured out a way to win that game. In years past, that had been a game that Clemson had lost, but
Right.
They figured out a way to win that game. So I would tell you that was one of those aha moments. And then, of course, after that, they just killed people. I mean, games weren't even close. They went to an open week, and then they came back and just started this run that was spectacular. The semifinal game, though, against Ohio State certainly was another one of those moments, because first and foremost, that Ohio State team was much better, I think, than anybody on the Clemson campus really realized, to be perfectly honest with you, including yours truly here talking to you right now. That Ohio State team was awesome. They were really, and they came out with in my mind, with a plan of, all right, let's come out, let's be really physical with Clemson. Let's bang them around a little bit, and let's see how they react to it. And, they had Clemson reeling. I mean, they really did. Clemson was reeling in that contest. But then ETN makes a little stiff arm and then cut back run to get them on the board. Obviously, Trevor takes off and goes on the long touchdown run right before the half. Those things happened, and then all of a sudden you had this sense of, okay, here we go. And the second half, was exactly that. And it was one of the most physical contests that I have been around since Clemson-Auburn at Auburn in 2010, the year that Cam Newton's team won the whole thing. That game back in 2010 there in Jordan-Hare was just a tremendously physical ball game. But that game against Ohio State, I think then Clemson was very fortunate also to have the extra time to be able to prepare for LSU, because I can tell you they needed it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that Ohio State game will go down as one of the best games in history, in my opinion. And
it had a little bit of everything. It had it had controversy. It had star power to it. It had a true blue blood of college football in Ohio State. I don't think the Clemson's to that blue blood status as of yet, and they got a chance maybe to make their mark there, but they're going to have another decade of really good football, I think, to be considered among that. And really, I think that blue bloods have already been determined, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know that Clemson will ever crack the blue blood, segment of college football. But that game had everything. It had everything in it, and it was a ton of fun to watch. It was a ton of fun to call.
Right, for sure. And, you talked about being a blue blood and establishing Clemson. I mean, can you kind of speak on what Dabo Swinney really means to this community, to this university, and like how has he done what he has done with this program? Because Clemson did have a national championship before he got here, but Dabo Swinney has taken this program to just heights that I don't think any of us ever saw coming.
Well, here I'll throw some stats at you. First and foremost, prior to Coach Swinney, Clemson had 11 10-win seasons in their history. All right, so they started playing football here in 1896. Obviously, Coach Swinney takes over midway through the 08 season. So prior to that, 11 10-win seasons. 7 of those now came under the belt of Danny Ford during the 80s and into 90. So there was that run there where Clemson football was really, really good. Obviously, Coach Ford leads them to a national championship in 81, but they were dominant in the decade of the 80s, won 87 games in the 1980s. And today's if you're under 40, I don't know that you understand the importance of winning 87 games over a 10-year period, because back in those days there were only 11 regular season games played, and then you played one bowl game, and that was it. So you got 12 games. Not like today where you're playing 15 games in a season if you're going all the way to play for a national championship game. So Swinney takes over, and within 24 hours, he's already made changes to the program that in the first 24 hours of him being there still have lasting effects to this day, and have had effects to this day that have rippled across the athletic department, across campus, and dare I say across the state, you could just tell that right away this was a guy that was going to leave his thumbprint on not just Clemson football, but he was going to leave his thumbprint on Clemson University in a very, very special way. So an ACC championship in 2011. Then they come back, they get blown out. I mean, they got just killed by West Virginia, but he didn't let it set him back. I mean, he just didn't let him set it. You give up 70 points to West Virginia, and he didn't let it affect him. Comes back in 12. They don't win an ACC championship, but they still make it to a Chick-fil-A Bowl and beat a better team in LSU by a point, field goal right at the end of the game by Chandler Catanzaro, 25-24. And that's the game that I think that Coach Swinney, well, as a matter of fact, I know Coach Swinney points to. That was the moment in time where he felt like, all right, this program has now really turned a corner, and we're about to, get it after it. So 13, we're back in the Orange Bowl. Just 2 years prior, we get blown out by 70, and Coach Swinney said in the post-game press conference afterwards that, hey, this was the first time that Clemson had been here since 81 playing in an Orange Bowl. It's not going to be long before we're back. They're back 2 years later, and they beat Ohio State, beat Urban Meyer and Ohio State 40-35. Then they move along in 14, don't have a great year, but still able to take Oklahoma to task, beat them 40-6. So now you can kind of get the sense of where I'm going. And not only are they winning 10 games in a season, but now they're now beginning to beat some of the Bluebloods in college football, and not in most instances not beating them by a little, but just actually spanking them and sending them home. And so it has just kind of continued. They obviously play for a national championship in 15, play for it in 16, 17, get knocked out in a Sugar Bowl by Alabama, come back in 18 and now 19. It's been amazing, this run that they're on. They're 69-5 in the last 5 years. Nobody else has a better record in college football than Clemson University. And who would have thought that? I throw that stat out to you, and I bet you most 80%, 90% of those listening had no idea that Clemson had the best record in the last 5 years. But that's where he's taken and turned this program to, and he's done it in a manner that is kind of, to be honest with you, is the envy of a lot of other coaches. When he took over the program midway through the 08 season, he was called into a board of trustees meeting, and the board guys were saying, listen, we just want you to go out and build a program like Texas, like Michigan, like like Alabama. And he stopped in mid-sentence and he said, gentlemen, that's not my vision for what Clemson football should be. My vision is that I want them to say, we need to be like Clemson. And it wasn't long ago that the head coach of Texas said, you know what, we need to be like Clemson. And you've heard the head man at Michigan say, we need to be more like Clemson. And now you have a lot of coaches now that are saying that they're starting to pattern their ways after what we're doing here in this small little town in the upstate of South Carolina that sits on a lake, but we're getting it done.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Dabo Swinney is easily, outside of me being an Auburn fan because I'm a graduate. I mean, Dabo Swinney has to be hands down, in my opinion, one of the best coaches in college football history. And if he comes out and wins another national championship this year and probably collects more than just this year in the future, I mean, you have to mention him in the same breath as Nick Saban, Bear Bryant, Joe Paterno, all these legendary coaches from college football history.
Well, I can tell you, people think they've seen the best of Clemson football. I'm telling you, you haven't. You haven't seen the best of what this program is going to offer up. Believe me, the best, when Coach Swinney's favorite saying is the best is yet to come. And he absolutely means it, and he absolutely believes it. And now he has talked about here in recent weeks of making this the Roaring 20s, as he calls it. And the Roaring 20s for Clemson football needs to be not just the best decade in Clemson football history, but he wants it to be the best decade in college football history. And when he has said things like that, they have usually come to fruition. Like, I'll take you back to 2010. That's a year that Clemson goes 6-7. They lose in the Meineke Car Care Bowl in Charlotte, North Carolina to South Florida to end the season at 6-7. And he walks into the press conference afterwards and he looked at the media corps that was there and he said, listen, this did not end the way that we wanted. The season did not go the way that we wanted it. He just played for an ACC championship the year before in 2009. And he said, all right, here we are with a losing record. But I'm telling you, I've seen things with my guys and in this program that tell me we are about to embark on the greatest decade in Clemson football history. Now, nobody in that room believed what he was saying. And probably there were, and I would even say that probably very few in the building, inside that Clemson football building, kind of believed what he was saying, what he was preaching, what he was trying to sell. But as I just told you, the greatest decade had been 87 wins. So he goes through the decade now here of the 2010s, and he breaks that 87 record mark back in 2 years ago. And I mean, it's incredible what he's been able to do. And whatever he says now, I believe him. And he is exactly what you see. He is exactly what you see. There's very little ego to him. He's the most positive guy that you will ever be around. He wears his faith on his sleeve. And that again, guys, people don't like hearing this, but I'm just telling you, that's another big factor in all of this, is the way that he goes about living his life and not ashamed of what he believes and not ashamed to say what he believes, why he believes it, and then goes out and lives it.
Absolutely.
Right, sure. I mean, and that has to help in recruiting. And, to move toward players, who he did recruit, we've already kind of highlighted Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people would consider Deshaun Watson the best player in Clemson football history. But Trevor Lawrence is entering his junior year now, has 2 national championship appearances, won his first as a true freshman over, like you said, an Alabama team that was touted as the best in college football history. Would you already put Trevor Lawrence ahead of Deshaun Watson in terms of ranking their careers? And if you wouldn't yet, what does Trevor need to do this next year or these next 2 years to really cement himself as the greatest Clemson player?
Well, I don't know that he has ascended Deshaun yet. I would say the two of them are certainly neck and neck from that standpoint. But the thing that now that he has the opportunity to do to separate him from Deshaun is go out and win a national championship here in 2020. And right now they're the odds-on favorite to do just that. I mean, Clemson returns a ton They return a ton, particularly over on the offensive side. They've got some new pieces that will come in defensively that are going to come in and play right away through the recruiting value that they have. But Trevor right now, I think that what he really needs to do is just do the little things. He needs to forget about the big things and just take care of the little things, because when you start taking care of all those little things, then they start piling up and they become a big thing. And so that's what he has to do. He's a great leader. I mean, he really is a great leader. Obviously, his talent is just shocking at times to see what he does. And the thing that I really like about him, and I've told several people this, is that I've never seen Trevor take a step back, even in the national championship game that was just played. People will say, well, okay, well, that was a step back. Not the way that he handled it, to be perfectly honest with you. Afterwards, even though he was very disappointed in his performance and what happened, but if you could have seen him in the locker room with all the guys, and he actually went individually to each and every guy and talked with them in the locker room, he was able to take what was a negative and he turned it into a positive. So even then he took a step forward. And that's been the thing that has so impressed me about Trevor, and was also one of the things that just being around Deshaun that you saw him do all the time. Even Deshaun goes down with the ACL injury at Georgia Tech, and even in that instance, he didn't let it affect him. He comes back a couple of weeks later. They brace the knee up, and he leads them to a victory over South Carolina in the state championship game, and he's diving into the end zone and things like that. So that's where those two are very, very similar from that standpoint. But Trevor has a chance to separate himself and then go on and win another national championship. Heck, you win 2 national championships in 3 years, then you're going to be considered, among the best of the best.
Absolutely. And I mean, not only would he be winning 2 national championships in 3 years, he would go down with 1, maybe 2 losses in his entire college career, and that is just, unheard of.
It is. I'll admit to you, it is a little sick. And I have my buddies that call me, that I went to high school with and college with, and friends here in the area. Every now and then they'll just call me, or we'll be at lunch together, and they'll look at me and say, "Do you?" And I just stop them right there. I said, "I understand. That's why I tell people all the time, I've got the best job on the Clemson campus right now, because they pay me to go watch this stuff. They pay me to be there and call on this stuff. And it's incredible. What I am witnessing is history. And I think that I need to, at times, even I'll turn 58 next week. And at times, even at this age, I pinch myself and, gosh, is this real? This isn't a dream. But I'm telling you, the best is yet to come. My job now is not to screw it up. I told my wife they announced, the way they do schedules now, we're going to play Oklahoma in 35 and 36. I'll be 72 and 73. If I can make it there, I will consider it a success.
For sure. Sounds like a sweet gig.
Yeah.
But speaking of Trevor Lawrence, we've heard it. We've all heard the takes. There's a number of people that are urging him to sit out this next season to avoid injury and focus more on his future in the NFL.
No, and that's just idiocy is what that is. That's right. Just somebody putting something on paper on a website to generate hits. That's all that is.
We need more clicks, yeah. So.
Yeah, he's not even thinking about doing that. Nor should he do that. Nor should any player do that. That's part of the brotherhood that's within the locker room. If you have somebody that's going to do that, that's going to quit on the team, then no. That tells you all about that person character to begin with, and that's just a waste of time.
You hear about all the players that sit out their bowl games and how much flack they get for that. Could you imagine a player sitting out an entire season?
Yeah. Now I almost understand sitting out a bowl game considering, maybe, obviously no one's going to sit out a playoff game. No one's going to do that, but like no one's going to sit out a conference championship game either. But I understand, for somebody maybe sitting out a bowl game. I really do. I understand that. But no one's going to sit out a season. That is too individual. That's too much me. And I understand there's no I in team, but there is an M and an E in team.
Yes.
So I understand that. But that's to sit out a season would just be lunacy. And I don't see how that would be profitable, because the other thing you have to understand, these guys are marketing themselves, and particularly now with what looks like the new NCAA agreement is going to be, these guys can now start profiting off of their image and that kind of stuff. Then you're telling me by sitting out? No, You got to be as marketable as you possibly can. And the way that you become the best marketable guy is to go out, do your job, do it in a way that reflects in a good light, make good decisions, don't make bad decisions, make good decisions, and win. You want to know why Clemson is packing them in the stadium? Because they're winning. And
Right.
that's you don't win. I've seen it when Clemson hasn't won, and it's not a pretty sight.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you hear a lot of news about how stadiums are trying to or programs are trying to get fans in the seats by creating like different events during the game and things. But like you said, I think the sole solution to that is to go out there and win, because if you are out there winning national championships, regardless if you're Auburn with an 80,000 person stadium, Clemson with their stadium, which is similar to Auburn's, or you're Alabama or LSU with over 100,000, you're selling that out if you're winning national championships.
Yeah, no doubt. You've got to be playing winning football. If you're not playing winning football, then you're not going to generate revenue, and thus the reason that coaches get let go after maybe just 2 years into a contract. It's a business, whether we like to say it or not. It is a business, and there's a lot of people that therefore depend upon. You asked me back at the beginning of this, what does Dabo Swinney mean? Dabo Swinney economically means he means hundreds of millions of dollars to this area. I mean, it's incredible, just because there's 80,000 people in our stadium, and when we have, like when you all were here when Auburn came to town, well, there was probably 120,000 people that were here for that game. 40,000 of them were just outside the stadium just to be here for the atmosphere and to tailgate and enjoy the family or enjoy friends and sit out there and watch it on their televisions. And then when the game is over, everybody get back together. Let's discuss it. Let's invite the opponent in. We'll share a favorite beverage and a wing and some cake and that kind of stuff. But what he means economically is you can't put a mark on that. He's paid $9.3 million a year, and he's a bargain. The way I always describe this is, say you're the top guy at your stockbroker. All right, you're the top stockbroker in New York. How much money do you think you're generating for your business? You're generating billions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, if you're paid at 10%, if your commission is 10%, you're a bargain. You're an absolute bargain. Believe me, Coach Swinney is an absolute bargain with what he does and what he generates for other people other than just Clemson University.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And moving into this next season, our listeners probably are more SEC fans than anything. So can you?
That's okay. You can come over from the dark side anytime you
want. If you guys keep winning, we're going to have to. But can you let our listeners know what's one under the radar player that people aren't talking about? Because everyone knows about Trevor Lawrence, everyone knows about Xavier Thomas and Travis Etienne. But what is one under the radar player that people should be looking for this coming fall?
Well, I think that the guy I'm going to mention, obviously, he played a ton for us his freshman year, and that's Tyler Davis. Tyler Davis is a defensive tackle, and I realize that defensive tackles don't get a lot of love. I mean, I understand that. But Tyler Davis is the kind of guy that he can be a dominant type player in college football, and also I think even on the next level. I think just going into his sophomore season, he is a guy that he gets in your face. Quarterbacks hate it when they get pressure coming in their face, and Tyler Davis is a guy that can do that. Tyler Davis is a guy that is going to be out there, and he's going to play just about every down. You're not going to have to take him out of the lineup in situations. You can play him in every down. So that would be the guy I would tell you to really. And then so that's on the defensive side of the ball. And then I would tell you Jackson Carman, the left tackle. And again, I'm talking about something that doesn't get a whole lot of pub, but I'm just telling you, Jackson Carman at left tackle, he's the guy that has the blind side of Trevor Lawrence. He is a valuable piece to the puzzle of what they can do. He's a great pass blocker. He's a really good run blocker as well. And so both of those guys probably are probably a little bit overlooked on this Clemson team as it concerns their value to what Clemson does.
Right, for sure. So I have another question about this 2020 Clemson team, especially regarding the defense and more specifically the secondary. So we see players like Tanner Muse, Isaiah Simmons, and Kayvon Wallace moving on from Clemson, going to the draft. What is, like we mentioned before, most of our audience are SEC fans, so we don't really know a lot about Clemson's future plans, but what are their plans to replace these players in their secondary?
Well, they do have pieces of the puzzle that they're going to be able to insert, and some of them were freshmen this year and played meaningful snaps. Not a ton of snaps. Nolan Turner's one of those guys. Kevin Turner's son, who of course played at Alabama and unfortunately passed away from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a couple of years back. But Nolan's going to be certainly one of those guys that's going to be counted upon back at the safety position. Nolan's played a ton of football for us over the last couple of years, and obviously had the big interception against Ohio State, to kind of seal a deal there in the semifinal game in the Fiesta Bowl. So he's one of the guys. There's another guy by the name of Landon Zanders, who you probably have zero idea when I mention that name who this guy is. Not even a little bit. He played special teams. He got some time at safety as well this past year. He's got the Palomalo hair. So he's got this long flow that comes out the back, but he is a guy that is very physical, very fast, and has good coverage skills, which is everything that you want back there at one of those safety positions. So from a safety position, that's certainly Darian Kendrick. He's back at one of the corner spots. He was a guy that was playing wide receiver, less than a year ago. Actually, this was about the time that they started thinking about flipping him over to DB was at this point last year. And actually he went through the spring playing both wide receiver and DB. And then they moved him full-time over to defensive back. So he's a guy. And then it's going to be interesting to see what happens at that other corner position, at least from a starting role is concerned. There's a kid named Mario Goodrich who played a little bit for us this year that could take over that corner spot. Andrew Booth is a guy that probably also will be in the mix at that corner spot. But what you'll see Clemson do early on in the season, and this is kind of something that Coach Sweeney has done now the last several years, is that we'll get into that month of September, and he's going to play bodies now. He's going to play a ton of people, as a matter of fact. I mean, this year we played 105 in one game and 111 in another game. It was stupid. You're trying to keep up with it as a play-by-play guy. Thank goodness I go to practice every day, so I know who most of these guys are without having to look at my spotting chart. But that's we have gone. You travel with 72 guys to a league game, and there have been several occasions where they played 70 or more, or at times all 72 guys that they traveled with to a league game. He's going to do that, and he does it. One, because the kids earn it in practice. They earn the right to play in a game. And two, is to build competitive depth. And I think that's one of the things that really has helped Clemson as they hit the month of November, or what Coach Sweeney calls the championship phase of the season. They hit November, going to December, January, hopefully, is that they have tremendous depth. And they're not just 2 deep. They're 3 deep at a lot of positions, if not every position on the field. And so that's one thing you can certainly look for in the month of September coming in 2020 that Coach Sweeney is going to do, both offensively and defensively.
Right. And so to get back to the defense, I'm sure you knew this question was coming. We have to talk about Brent Venables and just the impact he's had.
Sure.
When do you think he is going to take his opportunity to be a head coach, or do you think he's actually going to take that opportunity? And how much credit do you give him for helping Dabo Swinney build this program?
Oh, I give him a ton of credit. Brent shows up here in 2000 the 2000. Let's see. Chad Morris came in 2011, so Brent came here for the 2012 season. Is when he was first here, and you could tell that right from the start that one at that time. Remember back in 2012 when he came here, a lot of defensive coordinators were complaining about having to play against the spread. Venables never said a word about it. He just took it on as the challenge that this is where it was going, and this is what you're going to have to do, and you're going to have to make adjustments to what your defensive philosophy, not just year to year, but you're going to have to do it in game. He's one of the greatest that I have seen making in-game adjustments. He's remarkable at what he does. You get him to the locker room, and more often than not now, you go back and you look at the second half numbers for Clemson, particularly like the last 5 years. The second half defensive numbers for Clemson are just lunacy, the way that they shut down teams, because he gets a feel for you and he makes adjustments and away he goes. Now, how long is he going to stay here? He's going to stay here a while. He's got both of his sons playing for him. He's not going to leave. And one of them, Tyler, is just signed with us. He just has begun his Clemson career. He's one of the early enrollees that came in January. So he's here, and he's going to be here for a while. So, he's not going to leave, at least for another 4 years would be my guess. And then here's the other thing of it that you all don't know, and probably most people don't know. He has 2 young daughters who are younger than Jake and Tyler. They're just preteen guys. Or preteen girls, I should say. They're preteens. And then his wife, Julie, but those 3 girls right there, those 3 females in the household, they love living in Clemson, South Carolina. And for him, just as a husband and as a father, to walk into a household and say, I'm uprooting you and we're moving on to another job, believe me, that would not carry well in the Venables household. That would just not go over well at all. Now, Julie would support it. The girls would be brokenhearted. Julie would very much support that. Don't get me wrong. She's going to support everything that Brent wants to do, and the girls obviously would come along as well. But I don't know that, and I just don't know that Brent wants to. He loves it here. He's paid well. They're winning. He's getting recruits in. He's getting players in here that, even if he went and started his own program, it's going to take him a while to get that caliber of player that's going to come to him, unless he goes to Oklahoma or someplace like that where he can recruit that right away. But I just don't see Brent leaving here anytime soon, and that's just going to now be a continuous question. Now is how long is Brent Venables going to stay? I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that he knows the answer to that, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right. And I mean, just to kind of, so then we'll try to get this wrapped up. We got a handful of questions, but kind of want to shift the focus to your career. So can you kind of speak on what Clemson means to you and what it's meant for your career and just your experience at this university?
Well, Clemson means everything to me. It really does. So Clemson, I came here, my first broadcast for Clemson was in the fall of '94. All I was doing was the post-game stuff on the radio network. The folks that ran the Clemson network heard me do a game in 1993, a football game in 1993. They heard me do it, and they actually called me and asked me if I would be interested in coming to work for Clemson. And so I said, heck yeah. I was living in Hendersonville, North Carolina at that time, which is just right over the border from Clemson. So the flagship station at that time was in Greenville, so it was less than an hour drive for me to come back and forth. So that's where I started in '94. And I mean, it's been everything that I could possibly want. I went to Appalachian State. in Boone, North Carolina. Graduated from there in 1984. Got a job as a sports director for the local radio station there in Boone, North Carolina. Just about a month after I graduated from college. Was fortunate enough to start doing high school sports. Did play-by-play for App State basketball in the winter of that 84-85 season. Started doing football for them. Was the play-by-play voice there at App until 1991. And so that gave me a good. But I was 20-something. I didn't have a clue as to what I was doing. I mean, I didn't have any clue as to what I was doing. Made all kinds of mistakes. It made just horrible decisions with some stuff. But still, it taught me. I'm not going to run away from that period because it was a learning experience for me and it helped me grow. And then coming to work for Clemson, the exact same thing. I'm in my early 30s, and I'm learning what this business is all about, and doing things. And actually, guys, to be honest with you, when I went to work for Coach Sweeney in 2010 because of our relationship, he hired me on as part of his support staff, and I worked for him from 2010 to 14. It wasn't until we hired a new athletic director, Dan Radakovich, came on board that I made the switch over to doing football, play-by-play for football, and became the director of broadcasting at Clemson. And then I was just doing football and baseball at that time. I wasn't even doing the basketball. Now I'm doing it all. And so even there, I've gone through a growth process. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. When you're in your 50s, you think your time has passed by you. But if it wasn't because of relationships, it wasn't because of being in the right place at the right time and being able to show what I could do to the right people, then I wouldn't be in this spot where I am today. And I'm truly blessed by God to have what I consider to be the best job in college athletics right now from an announcing standpoint, to be honest with you. I don't think that anybody has a better situation than what I have. I work for the university, which has its own advantages from that standpoint. And it's a great life. I mean, it's a wonderful life, but it took me 30 years to get there. It took me 30 years to get there. So it was a long ride, but worth every bit of it, both the ups and the downs.
Right, for sure. I mean, it seems like an amazing job, and it's like you said earlier, it's a great time to be involved with Clemson football. And looking back on your career, do you have outside of the national championships, is there one specific game that you would just consider the highlight of your career that you just enjoyed calling more than any of the others?
Well, this is going to surprise you, but I'm going to take you back to a game in 2010. It was baseball.
Right.
Clemson was playing Oral Roberts in a super regional. It was game number 1 of the best of 3 series against Oral Roberts. Clemson held a 7-4 lead going to the top of the ninth. And coming out of the top of the ninth, they trailed 8-7. And so Clemson loaded the bases up, 1 out. Tyler Colvin, who went on and played in the major leagues, left-handed hitter, came to the plate on a 0-1 pitch or a 1-1 pitch. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was 1-1. Hit 1 out for a grand slam. Now, the reason that was so important to me, and again, this is taking it back to relationships, because I'm just telling you, I know both of you are young and in college and stuff like that. Relationships are everything in life. It's what made this moment so special to me was a relationship. And the reason it was so special to me was because I had my father sitting on my left side of me. My mother was sitting on the right-hand side of me in the broadcast booth. It was the only time in my broadcasting career that I had both my mother and my father in the broadcast booth with me. My father would end up passing away 2 years later. And I'm just telling you, I've got a great picture of the 3 of us in the booth from that thing. That's the moment that of everything that I've ever done, that's the moment that stands out the most to me in my broadcast career, was because one of the excitement of the situation, but to have my parents there side by side with me made it even that much better, made it 1,000 times better.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So this is going to be my last question of the interview. So you hear all kind of folks talk about Clemson being one of the greatest venues in college football, in college athletics, period, really.
Right.
Zach and I are from SEC country, so obviously we're biased on this one, and a majority of our listeners are as well. But what is it about a Clemson game day experience that separates it from the rest?
Well, it starts early. The part of it is just the tailgating atmosphere that we enjoy at Clemson. All right, so say we have a 3:30 game. All right, I'll just throw a 3:30 game out there. It's good start time. Really for everybody. They'll open up the lots at 6 o'clock in the morning. Clemson has over 15,000 placard reserved parking spots on campus.
Oh wow,
15,000. Most typical SEC places have maybe 1,200 to 1,500, maybe.
Yeah, you can't find a parking spot, period.
Yeah, Auburn is a free-for-all. You better be there on Thursday. You show up to your spot, and you better be there to claim it at that. But that's not the way it is at Clemson. And because it's placard and because it's reserved, it's also generational. So you have great-grandparents that are there with their great-grandchildren and family that have been always parking in the same spot, always sitting in the same seats and so that means that all the rest of the people that are around them, tailgating wise and also in the stadium, they know. I mean, it's like this. That's the thing about. That's why there's this Clemson family hashtag that is out there, and Coach Sweeney talks about Clemson family. That's a huge part of it. All right, so it starts right there. Then obviously, you get into the stadium and there's, it seats 80,000, so it's not the biggest, but it is in the bowl. It's in the low spot of campus, so it's in this bowl and it holds the noise, and the noise in there is just tremendous. And then you have this entrance where you can see the team come out of the tunnel, but they turn away from the field. They go and get on buses and ride around the top of the hill at Death Valley and come rub Howard's Rock that's been there since the late 60s and come running down to fire the cannon that started back in the 40s or 50s. They fire this small cannon. That's a shotgun shell, basically, is what it is. They fire that cannon, and the team comes spilling down the hill, and as Brent Musburger said, it's the most exciting 25 seconds in all of college football. There's not a better entrance in all of college football than that entrance right there. I mean, it makes the hair on your arms stand up, and I mean, it just gives you. I mean, it's incredible to watch that. And then the game takes place, and then the game happens. And if you're Clemson football here recently, you're winning at home. I mean, you're just not losing. You're winning at home. So that the fun's in the winning. That's the other part about it. The fun is in the winning. And then after it's all over, people spill out and they don't leave. They stay there and tailgate for another 2 or 3 hours. And if you're the opposition, they'll invite you on in. Come on in. Let's sit down with us. Let's discuss the game. They do that prior to the game. And they do that after the game. So it's special. I mean, it really. If you've not been to Clemson, it should be your bucket list item. It should definitely be on your bucket list to go and do. There's things on my I haven't been to LSU for a night game. I'm going to get the opportunity because Clemson and LSU are going to be playing coming up here in the not too distant future.
Oh yeah.
I get to go to Notre Dame this coming season to go see a football game at Notre Dame in early November the 7th of this fall. So there are some things I get to check off my list, and those. So I'm like all the rest of you. There's places that I want to go and places that I want to see, but I get the privilege, at least for half of my season, to show up to one of the great spots in college football.
Oh yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I got chills just hearing you describe the entrance right then. That was it's wild.
I mean, I will vouch. I have one more question, but before I get to it, you can ask anyone. I went with a group of friends from Auburn in 2016 to, as you said, like as we talked about before we started recording, it was an amazing atmosphere. And I remember I got set up with a tailgate right outside the stadium. I mean, they had like a big Clemson like fire truck and everything like that. And I tailgated. We got there probably 9 a.m. and the game didn't kick off till like 6 p.m. or something like that. It was like a night game, and we tailgated with them all day. They fed us. They treated us good, gave us tours, pretty much made the whole experience worth it. And you were not lying when that entrance is one of a kind. And I'm biased because of the Eagle flight, but there's nothing like being at Clemson, coming down the hill as sundown's coming. And to this day, I've been to Death Valley, LSU. I've been to Clemson. I've been to Georgia, been to Ole Miss. I've been to Florida. I've been to a lot of stadiums. And Clemson, by far, has been the loudest stadium I've ever been to in my life.
It's fun. That place, when it gets rocking and rolling now, it gets deafening. But it is the true Death Valley now. My friends at LSU. Obviously, Clemson's moniker came from started back in the 50s. LSU didn't earn that moniker until sometime in the 60s. And actually, they called LSU's place Death Valley because you couldn't hear. So it didn't become Death Valley. My guess is it became Death Valley because of the Cajun accent. Death Valley. So they can't lay claim to to be in the original Death Valley.
Man, so I guess you must have been reading my mind. That was my last question about your opinion on the Death Valley debate. So instead, it's February. We have like 6-7 months till the season kicks off. Can you give us your way, way, way too early prediction for this Clemson team this year?
Well, they're going to be really good, and I expect them to be. I expect them to be back in the national championship hunt again, unless there's something catastrophic happens with injuries. I expect Clemson to be right back there. I mean, the schedule sets up, I think, extraordinarily well for them. They, like I said, they do have the trip where they have to go to Notre Dame that will be in early November that everybody's going to circle on the calendar. The ACC is actually going to be a little bit better than folks anticipate this coming year. It was not good last year. I'll be the first to admit it. It was not a great conference last year. But I think when you look at the overall schedule, I think that things do set up pretty well for Clemson. They'll have the opportunity to hopefully run the table again and be undefeated, go to an ACC championship game and get to 13-0, and then have an opportunity to go play for a national championship somewhere along the line going through But I expect them to be right back in the playoffs. And I'll be honest with you, I'll be shocked if they're not in Miami again to play for yet another national championship. That's just where I think that this program is. It's the kind of talent that I think that is here. It's the coaching that it also is here. But it's also the mindset, and it's kind of ingrained into the program, to be perfectly honest with you at this point in time.
Right. Well, we are definitely going to be working to get credentials to Miami. So if Clemson's there, we'll expect a text from me because we would love to have you back on the show to talk the national championship. Absolutely. But we appreciate you coming on. You gave us a lot of your time, way more than we ever expected. So is there anything you want to plug, social media, any podcast shows, anything that you want to talk about?
No, I am on social media, but I don't plug myself. My social media account probably is not the most exciting in the world, probably for especially if you're a college student. Mine's more about faith and that kind of stuff on my faith and family and certainly Clemson Athletics is what my social media account is all about. But I would tell both of you, one, first and foremost, y'all are doing the right thing if this is what you want to go into. If you want to go into a broadcast career right now, you're doing something that you think is big. In essence, it's one of the little things though that you're doing that's going to give you a step up and a step ahead of everybody else as you're doing this. Broadcasting, media, whatever it might be, social media, you don't have to be behind the mic. You don't have to be in front of a camera. There's all kinds of things that you can do from a broadcasting standpoint, journalism standpoint, and you can make a great living and get to go to some great places to do all of this. So kudos to both of you guys for doing this. You're making your way now, and it's going to be fun for me now. We have a relationship. This is what I go back to. This is the beginning of our relationship. I'll be on again with you all, and at some point in time, I'm going to meet you all face to face, and it's going to be fun. I'll follow you all, and hopefully you'll follow an old man for the rest of his career. and see what's going. But anytime that you need something, I'll be there for you. I'm always either an email or a phone call away. And anything that I can do to help you all out, be more than happy to do it.
Well, it's definitely appreciated.
Yeah,
definitely
thank you so much. Definitely appreciate it. But so guys, that is a wrap on this episode. We appreciate Don.
Wait a minute, I got one question for you. Whoa.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
let's go.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why Bluebloods? I mean, where is that? Why Bluebloods? How did you all come up with the name Bluebloods?
Zach, that was you, man. Let's hear it.
It was. So when we started this podcast, we've been wanting to start this podcast for a while now. Me and Brandon have known each other since 4th grade. So we've talked about this. There's been long nights back in high school where we were talking about doing this and we just never got to step on it. We got caught up with other things. So we decided to start it this past August. And the hardest part, to be honest with you, was finding a name. We wanted to make it football relevant because we wanted to start out college football, but we hope to expand to other sports eventually. But we wanted to focus on college football. So we looked through, a bunch of just different names, and we saw a bunch of people had different plays and formations and all kind of stuff like that. And it just hit me. I was reading an article, and they were talking about, actually, it's going to be funny, if Clemson counted as a blue blood program. And I was like, the Bluebloods would be awesome because, like, that's unique to college football. It's all about being excellent. And if we're going to start a podcast, me and Brandon don't do anything, half-stepping. We want to be the best at what we do, and we were going to make this successful regardless. So I thought it'd be a great name to go with it. After some searching, there was no college football podcast under the name Bluebloods, so we ran with it. And, we're about to enter our 2nd season of production. We've grown tremendously thanks to people like you giving us the time of day and actually responding to, an email of someone who might not have, the credentials of someone from like ESPN or, a real radio station. So you guys get a lot of the credit. But yeah, we just going to keep going. And it just hit me one day reading the article, and we got lucky enough that it was available. So we're in the process of making all that, getting our name out there more.
Yeah, I think that I had an idea. Like, I was like, let's be like the Fourth and Forever podcast, or like the Flea Flicker. It was like cliches. Like, I'm pretty sure my Google history was just the corniest thing in the entire world that night. But
see, I love it. See, that's what I'm talking about. Relationships all the way back to 4th grade. See, that's exactly what I'm just telling you guys. You're going to meet more and more and more people, and you're going to find out just how great they have been in your life. That's so true to me. And you're just going to find it. You think that this is an old guy. Just what is he talking about? I'm just telling you, you have no idea how great relationships are going to help you out. That, and have a positive attitude about it. Forget the negativity. All right. Don't ever believe any negative word because you can do anything. You all can do anything that you put your mind to and that you want to do. Now you got to work hard and say it was going to be easy. You're gonna face difficulty and you're gonna face adversity, but make sure, and you're gonna fail. I've done that. I've failed, but I try to always, when I fail, I'm making sure that I fail forward. I don't let it knock me back. Then I'm gonna make the best of it and fail forward. But I'm just telling you, the best is yet to come for you guys. You got it right at your fingertips. All the best to you, and I appreciate you having me on to spread just a little bit of the gospel of the Clemson Tigers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For sure. And we'll be tuning in, listening to you. And I'm actually in the process of trying to get credentials for the Notre Dame Clemson game because, as we talked about for the podcast, my uncle is going to be going. So I'm going to try to get tickets for that. So if I get to see you there, I'll definitely meet up with you then.
Good luck. I don't know if you've seen ticket prices, but it's already kickoff time is set 7:30 on NBC on November the 7th. It's one of the few things that we know is going to be true in fact for the coming football season, but it should be a lot of fun, and I hope that we do see you there. Okay.
Yes,
for sure. Thank you for coming on and everything. And for right now, guys, we're out.